Alrighty, so I'm finally doing the interview. Not the interview, shit. Oh my god, I just got off work. I am finally doing the I don't know, series or docu, whatever you want to call this, about Ryan D and his cult, the cult that he was raised in. All the footage you're about to see was given to me by Ryan D. The footage of his father and the people talking about his father, all that stuff was provided to me. This particular picture here was given to me. He told me that you know, the cult that he was raised in was a very dark, sadistic cult, and it was brutal. It was really, really brutal. And I'm thinking that's probably why he feels so connected to EFURU, because she's currently in a very brutal cult and he was in a brutal cult. So that's his trauma bond. And I guess because since he was in a brutal cult, he is now creating a healing cult to rectify that brutalness. So the first couple of videos you're about to see is from the dark side of the cult that he was raised in. These are all pictures that was provided to me. So never before seen footage of rituals and ceremonies and things like that. I had to blur out the faces for their protection. So you guys just tell me what you think, and let's see why Ryan is the way that he is. What's your deal, dude? What's your problem? Let's take a look.
Any of my Bigo videos or recordings on anyone's YouTubes other than Immortal Morals. Auditing America, Fake Mike, Real News. Is it?
One thing. You ready? Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god. Stop fucking lying. Always lying to me. You lying so much. You making it hard for me. Every time you tell me something, I figure that you're lying. Ooh, it's almost like faking. Oh yeah, yeah, I know you're lying, but you sound excited, and you know that I know that you lying.
Okay, so now that you know that all that was full of shit, right? Ryan was not in no damn cult. He wasn't raised in no damn cult. Okay, he was not. His father was a prosperity preacher. Period. That's it. He was raised in a very affluent home. Okay. His father received a lot of donations and a lot of money through the organizations that he was a part of, just like Joel Steen. No different. There's no different. The guy in the video that mentions cult behavior, he has the characteristics of being a cult leader, but it was not a cult. It wasn't. He had several affairs with women in the congregation and that worked for the church, just like I know you've heard a lot of pastors do, okay? He conned people out of money in his church, just like, you know, a lot of pastors do, right? So this is nothing new to us, right? We've seen this. This ain't no cult, bro. You can't find anything about this particular cult online. According to Ryan, he paid his attorneys, his father paid his attorneys all this money to scrub everything from the internet, so nothing is ever found about him. Yeah, literally everything in this entire video is what I found with the help of someone else. That's it. Nothing was scrubbed, nothing like that happened. Ryan is not in a cult. He was never in a cult. Don't believe that. When people ask him questions about his time being in a cult, he can never really answer that. He can never really give you straight answers. Ever. He can't. Because he was never there. He was never in a cult. He was just in a very strict household. And his father happened to be a prosperity preacher. Period. That's it. That's it. I've seen people get excommunicated from regular churches, Christian churches, all the time. I've seen it on TV, and I've witnessed it in person. Churches are cults. But what he's trying to portray is that he was a part of this sick organization that just, you know, would just give carbonation and everybody else a run for their money. Dude, oh my God. Your dad was literally Joel Osteen's father back in the early 90s, late 80s, period. Point blank. I don't know what he's doing, what this whole Trip 3 God is, Trip C, I don't know what he's doing, but what I'm realizing is that he's looking for attention. He wants attention. He wants notoriety. He wants clout for whatever reason. Don't give it to him. Okay? Don't. There's no such thing as a healing nation. This man is odd. Okay? And the interview that I had with him, it did kind of rub me wrong when he said that he knew that EFURU was much younger than him and he's way older than her, and he still had sexual feelings for this young woman. Weird. You're only doing this, Ryan, to appease to EFURU, and you're not going to get her attention. You're weird, bro. What the fuck are you doing? Y'all check this out.
This fool got the background like he fucking Dracula or some shit. Don't nothing about that say healing. That look like, that look like somebody pretending to be in the dark arts. His daddy wasn't a cult leader. He wanna be a cult leader. That's what that is. He mad cause he wasn't getting twat and shit.
With ignorance, innocence, and excitement all rolled up into one.
That's how Herb Fuller felt when he first got involved with Grace Bible Church, located at the start of our investigation in Rehoboth. Fuller said he was looking for answers. He wanted to serve God, and he thought this man, Bob McLaughlin, could tell him how.
He told me that there was tremendous blessings in store for me, that God had great blessings for me, and that he was going to show me how to live according to God's Word.
Grace Bible Church is not for the casual Christian. Members are urged to attend services 6 times a week. From this hidden camera video, you can see instead of pews, tables and chairs. On the day we were there, it was a packed house. And members take notes while their pastor-teacher lectures. But the church and its pastor have some financial problems, something that McLaughlin didn't hesitate to share with Fuller, a successful businessman.
He said he'd be shutting the doors in the church. He had maxed out all his credit cards. The offerings weren't keeping up with the expenses.
So, believing he was doing God's will, Fuller started contributing large amounts of money to Grace.
He needed to have an influx of money. I think within the first 3 or 4 months, I had given $70,000 or $80,000.
Eventually, over $200,000 in property and money. Who knew about this? Fuller said only a few within the church, and no one outside the church. And he says that's just the way McLaughlin wanted it.
So for me, he wanted me to get away from my professional help, whether it was my accountant, my lawyer. Even my wife didn't know what I was giving, because there's no way my wife would have gone for this.
Fuller's life became the church. He says he either spoke with or saw McLaughlin every day. He went to church services 6 times a week. So when his pastor suggested that a new, larger church needed to be built, Herb agreed to do the job. Actually, Fuller agreed not only to build this church in Swansea, but also this house, a parsonage in Portsmouth, for the pastor and his family. The estimated worth of both properties, $1 million.
I was setting myself up, or it was in store, for tremendous blessings, more blessings than I could ever imagine.
And the new church and house were blessings for the church and McLaughlin, too. According to court papers, the total church budget is less than $200,000 a year, including a salary of $310 per week for McLaughlin, as well as $25,000 per year for housing and transportation. Yet Fuller has charged in court papers that McLaughlin's lifestyle is beyond his means, and that's supported by those who say they know him well.
Don't tell me that the church needs money and I'm gonna, buy a car, that costs almost $30,000.
This former church member who asked us to conceal his face is talking about the IROC-Z Camaro convertible that McLaughlin drives. And that's not all.
Went to some of the nicer restaurants in Rhode Island, and I don't think I could ever afford that, right now.
Weren't you ever questioning how he could possibly afford it?
I just never questioned anything, because then I felt that I'd be judging him.
And that's also why this former usher in the church didn't question McLaughlin's unconventional way of collecting the offering.
You count the money, you separate the cash from the checks, and then at the end of service, which is when we collect the money, he comes in and stuffs everything in his bag and he takes off. We went out to eat pizza at this restaurant up in Federal Hill, and he just reaches into the bag and pulls out the money to pay for the dinner.
Last summer, Fuller says he did start to question what he called McLaughlin's expensive lifestyle. But in a sworn statement, McLaughlin responded to the allegations about his lifestyle by calling them pure nonsense, and said the only improvements in his lifestyle were the result of gifts from Fuller. And in a written statement through McLaughlin's lawyers, the board of directors, officers, deacons, and members of Grace Bible Church categorically and emphatically deny that any money of the church has ever been misused by anyone. Eventually, Fuller started to pull away from the church. And then in August, Fuller says a church deacon, Ray Almeida, asked to meet him here at this parking lot along Route 6. According to a sworn statement filed with the court by Fuller, the deacon made a threat. According to the documents, Herb had to immediately sign over the church and parsonage to Grace, or the church secretary would file sexual harassment charges against him and destroy his reputation. Through his lawyer, Almeida denies he ever threatened Fuller in any way, shape, or form. Fuller refused to comply, and only weeks later, he was slapped with a lawsuit by Grace Bible Church, demanding the 2 properties be turned over to them free of charge. In its complaint, the church claims Fuller knowingly, intentionally, and willfully promised to give them those properties, promises on which the church relied, and if they aren't fulfilled, the church claims it'll be severely damaged.
He promised to pay me back every dime that I spent.
It was never a gift.
It was never a gift.
Never a donation.
Never a donation.
But in a sworn statement from McLaughlin, he said Fuller acknowledged in public before many persons that he was building the church and parsonage for Grace as a donation. Among the witnesses cited, Jeff Tippins.
He says that you heard Herb say that the 2 buildings were a gift. Yes or no?
No, I never heard that.
Right now, the new church, built upon promises of tremendous blessings, is empty. A lawsuit over its ownership is still pending. But the person who built it is full of contempt for his former pastor.
This person is evil. He is a predator. And he's looking for people that he can take advantage of. It isn't about the Word of God. It isn't about Bible doctrine. It's one man's lifestyle and how and what he...
Since April, this is where Robert McLaughlin has been preaching, a former Weintraub's building in Somerset that his church converted. We tried to talk to McLaughlin here. First we were told he wasn't in, then that he was, but was advised by his lawyer not to talk to us. We waited across the street, only to be videotaped by McLaughlin's son, Ryan. McLaughlin's roots are in The Bible Speaks in the mid-70s, a ministry headquartered in Lenox, Massachusetts. He was ordained by its leader, Carl Stevens. McLaughlin lived at the Rhode Island branch in Johnston in the former Swampwater Motel along Route 6. From there, McLaughlin went to Bristol, where he started his own branch along the waterfront. If The Bible Speaks sounds familiar, that's because it made headlines in the late 80s, when an heiress by the name of Elizabeth Dovey Dennis sued to recover millions of dollars she gave to the church in Lenox. She claimed she was unduly influenced by Pastor Stevens. The court agreed. Meanwhile, McLaughlin broke his ties with The Bible Speaks and aligned himself with a non-denominational church in Houston, Texas. He still has the ordination certificate hanging in his church today. From Bristol, he moved to Warren in 1986 to a church called East Bay Christian Center. Dave Therian was an assistant pastor there and remembers McLaughlin's style of preaching.
Very charismatic. He had a lot of authority in his voice. People commented on the ability that he had to teach, but unfortunately there was a bit of control there.
Some of that control, according to Therian, involved McLaughlin's sexual advances toward female parishioners.
I probably don't know the extent of it. The ones that I do know, 8 to 10, 8 to 12 maybe, that I could say. Different degrees of immorality. And many of them were women that came for marital counseling. So they were at their weakness. They were there because they were having problems with their husbands.
See, when when Bob made advances towards me, I thought I was the only one he had tried that on. And I was very guilty, feeling, oh my God, I'm making this man fall.
Julie Almeida was a parishioner of McLaughlin's at East Bay. Her ex-husband, Ray, is still a deacon at Grace Bible Church.
He demeaned Ray a lot more than he demeaned me because, well, he was Ray's friend. He was always trying to get with me.
Therian says after the allegations came to light, McLaughlin was removed from the pulpit in 1991. A former church member who asked that his face not be shown remembers the day when it was announced McLaughlin was leaving.
It was stated plainly the day that I was there. I'll never forget, it was a Wednesday night, and it was gross sexual conduct was the term used.
Therian says McLaughlin admitted he had a problem and promised to get help. Therian says the church in turn agreed to continue paying his salary, and within a year he would come back. But Therian says that did not happen.
He immediately, I guess, began to contact church members and turned it around and told them that it was more of a church conspiracy to take the church from him.
But through a written statement from his lawyer, McLaughlin tells a different story. He says he voluntarily resigned from the church because he felt he no longer had the confidence of the majority of the deacons. McLaughlin also categorically and emphatically denies he ever engaged in sexual misconduct, calling them baseless allegations. After East Bay, this is where McLaughlin ended up, following a few brief stops in Providence and Westport, Massachusetts. Grace Bible Church in Rehoboth opened its doors in '92. Jeff Tippins was a member at Grace and says McLaughlin talked about the allegations at East Bay.
I was taught that it was a conspiracy, that because he was God's man, the world was out to get him, and that gave him validity.
And Tippins says absolute control over those who became what he calls McLaughlin's inner circle.
He sat at the head of the table there, and he's like, I trust you guys, because if there was something on the sidewalk, and I said to pick it up and eat it, you guys would. That's how much he had us like that. We would do anything he asked us to do.
The motivating and driving factors are power and money.
Larry Nichols is a nationally known expert in religion and cults. He studied McLaughlin and his teachings and talked with former members of his church and says,
If you look at the criteria for what constitutes a cult, Bob McLaughlin does fit the bill.
That criteria? A charismatic leader who controls the congregation with
no accountability whatsoever to anybody but God. Anybody that dares to question him runs the danger, the risk of being, castigated from the group, disfellowship from the group.
The church responded once again in writing by calling the allegation ridiculous and saying the expert in this instance has never spoken with any present members of the church or the pastor, but nonetheless believes himself qualified to give an opinion. But those who have left say they're concerned for those who remain and might have their faith twisted as well.
I just can't believe he can get so many people to be so weak and to keep falling into the same mess.
As long as that guy's in business, he's always going to have something to sell and someone to sell it to.
He sets himself up as your pastor, as your friend. So you just go, it's like a lamb being led to slaughter.
For us in Galatians 5, 22 and 23. By the way, hasn't Pastor Dave, I'm going to call him Pastor Dave. People say, how can you call Pastor Dave? Because I feel like it. I mean, there's all kinds of idiots out there that call themselves pastors. One of which is one of my sons, and I hope that you do not listen to him. He's an evil person. Stay away from him. The Bible says sometimes you have to name names. I'm naming names. Hymenaeus and Alexander, Paul named. Stay away from Ryan McLaughlin. I no longer consider him to be my son. I disown him right now publicly. And if you are a friend of him and listen to him, you are not invited to this church.